Okay, so we're coming to the end of an era. It's Halo Escalation 21 through 24, and I'm here with Archo.
Hello.
Hello. We're going to be checking these out. It's the last of the comic book series, and this was the comic book series between Halo 4 and 5. I still think Palmer is a plank of wood, and she is so one-dimensional, it's not even funny anymore. She's so one-dimensional, she's fading out of the comic book because comic is 2D. Anyhow, here we go. Episode 21.
Hey there, Canonites, welcome back. As August comes to a close, we are once again graced with an issue of Halo Escalation. Before we dive in, though, I have a quick bit of news to share. If you've kept up to date with all things Halo, you've probably already heard, but for everyone else, it was recently revealed that the Absolute Record story arc would be the final arc in Halo Escalation, issue 24 marking the end of the comics run. Naturally, that doesn't mean the end of Halo Comics, just the end of this particular series. It'll be interesting to see what 343 decides to do. Another ongoing series, or sticking more to serialized releases like they did with Marvel? Well, with that out of the way, let's dive in. This is Halo Escalation issue 21. The comic picks up with Jewel and Halsey trying to find a way to get into the Absolute Record. Lucky for them, a slipspace portal opens, this time not ripping them to shreds, and invites them in.
I cannot deal with their faces.
Elsewhere in the Song of Retribution, Palmer, Tanaka, and Glassman remain hidden, waiting for their time to emerge. Now, normally I'd gloss over this, but I wanted to show how this comic somewhat highlights Tanaka's background as a combat engineer and the specialties of her Technician-class Mjolnir armor. It's very small, but I felt it was appreciated. I also wanted to share this image of Glassman. Let it soak in. Let it
Tell me about the rabbits, George.
There are no wolves on Fenris!
Kill me. Back on Breath of Annihilation, the Sangheili forces are arguing over whether a Spartan was actually seen on board. As one might predict, it's leading to some heated debates, which will likely lead to confrontation and possibly even rebellion, especially once Ayet and Thorn go to work. Speaking of, Ayet wants Thorn to go out and help stir things up and create a panic. Thorn isn't too happy about this, especially after being used as bait on Ven 3, but Ayet basically tells him to get over it if they want to have any chance of getting off Breath and contacting the UNSC. Back with Song of Retribution, Halsey and Jewel are finally face to face with the custodian of the Absolute Record, who appears to be little more than a giant face. I definitely wouldn't have called that. Anyway though, Halsey tries to get the Monitor to let her in, but it's curious why the other humans feel a need to hide themselves. When Halsey expresses shock at the notion of other humans, the Monitor uses his sentinels to bring the drop pod they're hiding in to the platform. As one might expect, the two groups are immediately at each other's throats. Halsey tries to claim her right to be there as she does have the Janus key, but the Monitor won't hear it, noting that, quote, "A fellow contender made a fatal decision when deciding with whom to ally himself. I have been living under the burden of that mistake ever since." He then goes on to say that he'll allow both sides to explain their presence. Pausing a moment, I am now, more than ever, convinced that this AI is offensive bias. Now yes, there are more contenders than just offensive and
Gives a shit.
Yeah.
mendicant bias, but the way this contender speaks, it almost sounds like it was there, like Mendicant's actions had a very direct effect on it. This would indeed be true of offensive bias, who, due to Mendicant's betrayal, was severely restricted in terms of creativity and independence when compared to Mendicant. Now, it could still turn out that this contender is somebody new, but I have a strong feeling that it is offensive bias, and I know I'm not alone on that. Moving forward, we briefly jump back to Thorn and Ayet, who are causing a bit of a ruckus on Breath of Annihilation, before jumping back to Halsey and company. Glassman is trying to explain that he, Palmer, and Tanaka, and the UNSC at large, want to use the record in a way that is, quote, consistent with its creator's intentions. Halsey scoffs at that notion, a sentiment I can't help but share. I mean, seriously, Glassman, maybe that's your intent, but I can't believe you'd honestly believe that the UNSC, and especially Oni, share that sentiment.
Oni would give it to the Covenant in order to create a civil war.
Oni would snort bath salts and pass out in the bathroom.
While we as fans definitely have a better perspective when it comes to these sorts of things, I find it hard to believe that Glassman is that ignorant. Well...
Yeah, I don't know why you would believe that at all.
Maybe not. Anyway, before
Dumbass.
Glassman can finish, a zealot grows impatient and opens fire on a sentinel, leading to a full-on firefight. Tired of everyone's bullshit, the monitor removes the floors so that only the humans remain on 2 floating platforms.
I agree with the monitor in this particular instance. You children, stop fighting. The adults are talking.
Yeah.
Jewel hanging onto Halsey's platform for dear life. The monitor goes on to declare that a more direct means of examination is in order, as we are shown the silhouette of an unknown machine which, according to the contender, will prove beyond all doubt who is the rightful custodian of the absolute record. And that concludes Escalation 21. It feels a little more like filler than the last 2 issues have, but I still found it enjoyable to read. I mean, we now know beyond all doubt that the monitor of the absolute record is a contender class ancilla, and this issue would seem to indicate that we are indeed in the presence of offensive bias. I love that it doesn't just take Halsey at her word, and I can't wait to see what this machine does, how it will determine who is the legit custodian of the absolute record. I have a feeling that the monitor will ultimately side with Halsey, given that the cover of issue 21 shows Halsey and Jewel in a desert-like environment reminiscent of Requiem, while showing Palmer in what looks to be a human environment. But who knows? I really can't wait to find out. Taking a look forward not long from now, I'm not entirely...
Alright, let's move on. Dost thou have any thoughts on 21, Archo?
No.
No. I really do appreciate the fact they made Glassman look like a melted sheet of butter.
Hey Spartans, welcome back. It's been a hell of a week for Halo so far, and we just keep getting more and more as we approach the release of Halo 5. Today, we're of course talking about the latest issue of Halo Escalation, its final story arc on the absolute record that immediately precedes Halo 5. But enough of my ramblings, let's take a look. This is Halo Escalation, issue 22. Picking up from the last issue, Halsey and Jewel, and Glassman, Tanaka, and Palmer are all being subjected to a test to determine who truly has the right to access the absolute record. And right away we can see that the art looks amazing, a major step up from anything before. Where was this in the past? Anyway, we jump over to Breath of Annihilation to find a traitor zealot interrogating a Storm Sangheili. After a few panels, Ayit, pretending to be loyal to the rebellion, kills the Storm and is ordered to join the hunt for the Spartan. Ayit ducks out, warning Thorn of the incoming Covey forces, and heads on to his own mission. Thorn, meanwhile, comes under fire from 3 Wraiths, forcing him to evacuate Breath into the swamps outside. At this point, the comic frequently jumps between the story of the absolute record and Breath, so we'll wrap up with Thorn and Ayit, then focus back on what's happening at the record. After escaping Breath of Annihilation, the Covenant are out in full force after the Spartan as he hides in the swamp. Banshees fire into the marsh below as jackals, both Rutan and Ibieshin, search on the ground. Thorn takes out 2 jackals, but not before getting
He just punched that one in the face so hard.
Yeah, it really should have shattered the skull, but you know, yeah.
shot with a needler to the side. And again we have Spartan shields mysteriously disappearing because plot.
Yes.
Now one could argue that some of the Banshee fire might have hit and drained his shields, but seriously guys, we need to see this. Anyway, back on Breath, Ayit makes his way to Salih Neon's holding cell and frees him. Salih is thankful, but reluctant about his ability to rally any forces in the wake of his recent defeat.
He looks like a beluga whale with a skin condition.
Yes, it is saddening.
Yes.
Ayit masterfully plays on Salih's religious fervor, claiming to be a spirit of vengeance sent by the gods to grant Salih new life. Osmond certainly wasn't kidding when she called Ayit the most human Sangheili Oni could find. This half of the story pretty much wraps up here. Salih is free once again, and Thorn is bleeding out from the needler round in his side while Covenant...
What?
Yeah, needler rounds, they burst once they've penetrated a target. It shouldn't still be in there.
No, it shouldn't.
and forces
And
hunt
it's
for.
It should have sliced a bunch of his insides to ribbons, too.
I don't understand. The fuck am I...
Back at the absolute record, the test has begun. Both groups are given scenarios and each must choose the best way to handle said scenario. The first has to do with a species found to have flood immunity. Now, while the Yoned are shown, I think it's just a stand-in, not meant to mean that they're actually immune to the flood or resistant or something. Anyway, the test notes that vivisection of the species has a 35% chance of yielding a vaccine against the flood, while post-mortem dissection would have a 33% chance of yielding the same results. The question is, what is one to do? Sacrifice the species for the greater good, or work with them cooperatively?
Whatever the greater good wasn't.
As an aside, this test has a striking parallel to a test Dr. Halsey gave to John back in Halo First Strike. Having found that Sergeant Johnson was resistant to flood infection, Halsey created 2 reports, one containing her analysis for possible inoculation, the second containing the source for the analysis, Johnson's medical files. Halsey gave John both reports, asking him to choose which one to hand over to the UNSC, noting that while the UNSC would have a better chance of developing an inoculation with the latter report, it would very likely result in Johnson's death. The lesson she was trying to teach was that it's not necessarily justified to sacrifice one or even a few for the sake of the many. Which then brings us back to the Escalation story. Given the scenario, Glassman decides to work cooperatively with the species, while Halsey chooses to sacrifice them. Funny, given the story I just mentioned, but Halsey has changed quite a bit since 2552, and one could argue that she was just giving the answer that she felt would get her in. As the monitor asks the second question, Halsey apparently hacks into the system and shuts the freaking Contender class AI down.
See, to put this into perspective, a Contender class AI, I am not exaggerating when I say that a Contender class, in terms of pure intellect and processing power, is like 2 or 3 Primarchs put together.
I'm just sitting here looking at the screen and wondering why, God? Why? Why is it that the people that are doing these comics seem to know less than I do, and I know jack squat?
I don't know.
Really?
Yeah.
Dr. Halsey is indisputably the most intelligent human being in the galaxy, but she is not that intelligent.
No.
Really? All this build-up and Halsey hacks her way in? I know she's the smartest human in the galaxy, and a Forerunner expert at that, but come on! It's a Contender class AI! That's just cheap. So anyway, Halsey prepares to enter the Absolute Record and the issue comes to an end. I have to say, this is one of the weakest issues in the arc, which is even more disappointing in light of the massive improvement on the art front. I mean, the test was already kind of boring, and Halsey freaking hacked a Contender! No, I am not gonna let that go. Sure, it could absolutely be part of the test, but as I said back when Black Team was killed, you can't just look at these comics as an overall thing. You have to also understand the context of the individual issue. And right now, it looks like Halsey shut down a Contender class AI.
This just seems stupid to me.
Yep.
Well, at this point, we can only hope that whatever Halsey finds has been worth the build-up. We have 2 more issues left in the arc, the next one coming out on October 28th, the day after Halo 5's
Okay. Moving on, before I have a brain aneurysm. I already had one. Episode 23, Halo Escalations, and the last one was a... Cringe!
Well, Canonites, it's that time of the month again. Halo Escalation time. If I don't sound too thrilled, well, you'll soon see why. This is Halo Escalation, issue 23.
He sounded excited about pretty much everything so far, but now he just sounds fucking depressed.
We open with Halsey heading into the Absolute Record and encountering the Librarian AI from Requiem. So if the Librarian is present, why did she allow for the test in the first place? Why didn't she intervene when Halsey showed up with Jewel and another team of humans followed? Sorry.
This is
Very sorry. There I go trying to make sense of things again. Forgive me. The issue then jumps over to Palmer, Tanaka, and Glassman as they're fighting off Jules' forces. As they try to fall back after getting hit by a lich...
Didn't they fall 45,000 fucking miles?
No.
The group is cornered by a pair of zealots. Thankfully, both are killed by a sentinel. However, this is no ordinary sentinel and asks that the Spartans and Glassman accompany it. Meanwhile, Ayit has freed Salih Neon, reinvigorated him, and is preparing to help take Jules' vault of Forerunner treasures. I can't imagine why Jewel would leave such a vault on Breath of Annihilation rather than in his flagship Song of Retribution, but who am I to question the Didact's hand? Salih's small force, along with Ayit, begin their attack. Meanwhile, in the swamp, Thorn is still bleeding out and still being pursued by a single jackal. Now, I've pretty much said my piece on this whole situation last issue, but I neglected to bring up...
This is still a stupid plot point.
...some other vital questions. 1. Why the hell hasn't the Needler round exploded or...
Exactly!
Yep.
...broken yet? It's a common and distinct trait of Blamite. 2. Where the hell are the automated biofoam injectors? This was one of the major upgrades of the Mark VI platform, and as far as we know, it carried over to the Gen 2 platform. If it didn't, well, I can't imagine why it wouldn't have been. It was a great idea. Anyway, Thorn takes on the remaining jackal, only managing to kill it just before it reaches him. Unfortunately, Thorn stepped in an area with some particularly soft ground, and with the added weight of the jackal, he begins to sink. Meanwhile, at the Absolute Record...
What the hell have they done? This is stupid.
Huh.
It's like they did all this build-up and then handed the project off to a office temp with a bad attitude and a ketamine habit.
It does appear that way, yes.
The librarian gives Halsey a quick overview of the possibilities that lay before her. Nothing all that mind-blowing, sadly. Back with Palmer, Tanaka, and Glassman, we get to the real disappointment of this issue. That sentinel that saved them, that's...
What the hell? Tell me about the rampage, George.
It looks like a botched fucking... what the hell is it called?
Plastic surgeon?
Not that. Botox. It looks like a botched Botox.
Saved them? That's a fragment of the custodian AI. So basically, Halsey did hack a contender class Ancilla. God fucking damn it. Well, no wonder the Forerunners lost to the Flood. They couldn't make a decent AI to save their lives. Literally. First, Menniken Bias falls to the Flood, now the custodian can be hacked by one human. Granted, the smartest human in the galaxy, but that doesn't excuse what happened.
It does not.
Well, anyway, the gist of the situation is that in the event of a system failure, a small part of the custodian would be transferred into this Sentinel, and while he would eventually have full control of the Absolute Record, given enough time, he's hoping that the humans will help expedite the process. Back on Breath of Annihilation, Ayit receives a transmission from Thorn, who just pulled himself out of the swamp. Thorn says he needs to get out of the swamp due to his injury, but Ayit notes that if the two meet up, or if Thorn returns, they could both end up dead. Thorn ignores Ayit, grabs a Banshee, and begins to head back towards Breath. And back on the Absolute Record, Jewel is getting impatient with Halsey, seeming to finally catch on that Halsey has her own goals and motivations. He orders his zealots to detain her and remind her that her life belongs to them when she emerges. Inside the chamber, it seems Halsey had a way of listening in on what Jewel said and activates some sentinels to eliminate him and his forces, terminating their relationship. Of course, since we know how Halo 5 opens, it's kind of anticlimactic. And that's Escalation issue 23. Not a whole lot going on, no hints at how this might connect to Halo 5, and really, this just feels like a big filler issue. Never mind the persistent issues with Thorn bleeding out. Seriously, biofoam injectors! They've been standard in Mjolnir since 2552, 6 years ago in universe! And don't even get me started on Halsey hacking a contender again. For fuck's sake. Well, we have one more issue to go. Until then, this has been Halo Canon. Hope you're all enjoying Halo 5.
Oh boy. We will move right along. Get it set up. You ready? Alright, here we go.
Well, it's here. Escalation 24, the conclusion to the longest Halo comic ever. And God, was it disappointing. I mean, after the preview released, I didn't really have high hopes, but...
Oof.
Oof!
For some reason, I wanted to remain optimistic. I mean, the Janisky story arc was pretty good and certainly had...
Hope is the first step on the road to disappointment.
had a surprise ending, so maybe the remaining 18 pages would hold some sort of twist. Nope. Barely anything happens, so little in fact that I could probably sum it up in a single minute if I really wanted to. But
Damn.
We'll save any sort of rant or discussion for after the issue. Until then, this is Halo Escalation issue 24. We pick up with Jewel and his forces under attack from Sentinels, believing the Custodian to have retaken control, ignorant of the truth. Meanwhile, Palmer and Tanaka are fighting off Sentinels and trying to return control to the Custodian. Meanwhile, Salih Neon and his forces have taken control of Jewel's weapon vault. Salih thanks Ayit for his help and devotion before Ayit leaves for the hangar bay, claiming he will help secure it. In truth, he'll be waiting for Thorn to arrive. Unknown to Ayit, two zealots overheard his conversation in English from the last issue and follow him. Back at the Absolute Record, as Glassman and company continue to work to restore the Custodian, Halsey catches on and tries to interfere with the process. Informed of this, Palmer goes after Halsey. Jewel, meanwhile, takes note of the weakened attack from the Sentinels, a result of the Custodian's attempt to take back control, and orders Song of Retribution to approach the site. Back with Halsey, Palmer shows up and orders her to stop interfering or she'll shoot. Before she can, however, Halsey erects some sort of containment field and opens a teleportation node for herself. On Breath of Annihilation, Ayid is cornered by the two zealots. Making a plea for his life, he says that he'll bring the Spartan to them. And he does just that as Thorn crashes into the hangar with his Banshee, killing the two zealots in the process. At the Absolute Record, Song of Retribution fires on the site, hitting the chamber where Halsey and Palmer currently are. The blast frees Palmer and allows the recalibration process to finish. Halsey runs towards her teleportation node, Palmer firing at her from behind. And for some reason, Palmer now shoots like a stormtrooper. I mean, say what you will about the woman, but on any other day, she's a damn good shot. Just look at her performance in Spartan Ops. That's some skill. And now, despite the dozens of hours she has since spent in the Wargame Simulator, she's been reduced to a stormtrooper. God damn it. So, anyway, Halsey...
It just doesn't make any sense, dude.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a bit of fucking sense. None of this makes any sense.
I cannot wait to show you better stuff. The only reason we're watching this is because of the technical relevance to the plot.
Oh my god, this is so fucking bad. It doesn't make any goddamn sense. Like, Palmer is so fucking one-dimensional, it's not even funny. Halsey is becoming one-dimensional, and she doesn't even have a fucking ironed-out dimension. And fucking abilities and canon and things that should be, you know, rock solid are just fucking water at this point. It's like, who fucking made this comic? Like, was it Ryan Johnson?
No, but well, I shouldn't say Brian Reed. He only had jurisdiction over 4 of the issues. Dark Horse, who are usually very good. Like I said, probably just massive time crunch and limited budget throughout.
Yeah, but it doesn't make any sense, dude. I don't understand this. How could you make something this fucking ridiculous?
Yep.
I'm hitting play.
Halsey makes it through her teleportation node only to find herself on the face of the Custodian. He reveals that before she took control, she was actually on track to legitimately earn it. However, with her conduct, she has proven unworthy and the Janus key is taken from her. Then the Absolute Record starts... something. I'm honestly not sure what. Glassman says the site is disappearing right out from under us, but I'm not sure if that means it's disintegrating or moving itself or what. Anyway, Glassman reveals that he may have found Breath of Annihilation based on a star map revealed during the test. With it being their best bet for escape, they open a portal and jump through. Jewel, meanwhile, is preparing Song of Retribution for departure. A subordinate notes that if they leave now, many of their forces will be left behind, but Jewel rebuts that they have no time to waste. An incoming Phantom reveals that they have the unconscious Halsey on board, prompting Jewel to wait for it, but no other. On Breath, which is now under the complete control of Celine Neon, Glassman, Tanaka, and Palmer meet up with Ait, who brings them to Thorn's location. When Breath jumps to Sangheili's space, Ait and company depart on a Phantom and rendezvous with Oni. Celine, meanwhile, is confronted by Jewel. The two ships are evenly matched, so neither claims victory this day, meaning Celine Neon is still out there as a potential Covenant leader for the next game or story. The issue comes to an end on Infinity, where Lasky is debriefing Palmer. He notes that when talking about Halsey, she doesn't sound as angry as she used to. Palmer reveals that she's just glad that Halsey fucked up in the same way she did.
What does that even mean?
I don't know.
That is so fucking stupid. That is so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I used to hate it, but now they fucked up just like me. What the fuck?
Everything that Spartan Ops and Halo Escalation built up to, that's it. That's our payoff. What the actual fuck? Halo Escalation had quite the legacy to live up to. Halo comics have been generally well received in the community, and they, at one time, set a precedent for video game comics. As I once said, they weren't the first to do it, but they showed how to do it right. Now, it seems like 343 needs to go back and look at what made those comics work, why people enjoyed them, and what makes them memorable now. Halo Escalation was meant to fill the gap between Halo 4 and Halo 5, and while it does accomplish that goal, it only does so by the skin of its teeth. The overall story is so bare bones that it might as well not have happened at all. The Janisky story arc gave us hope that something real would happen in these comics, but now, at the end, you'd be forgiven for never knowing what happened. The Janisky is gone, and I don't really know what happened to the Absolute Record. We're basically where we were at the end of Halo 4's campaign.
Like, the only difference between then and now is that the Janus key doesn't exist anymore. That's legitimately the only fucking difference.
Yep.
That's it. That is the only difference right now, is that the Janus key no longer exists.
Remember how I said that the theme of nothing really happens would come back at the end?
This is fucking annoying. Like, major characters are disrespected, like Team Black, completely disrespected. The Spartan 117's reunion with his friends, completely disrespected. And the only thing we get out of all this fucking shit is, hey, remember the Janus key? Well, it's not going to be there.
As it stands, Spartan Ops and this comic don't matter, and may as well have never happened. Thorn went nowhere, the Janus key went nowhere, and nothing from Spartan Ops or Escalation plays into Halo 5 at all. Well, with the exception of Tanaka and that atrocious Palmer is cool with Halsey now bit. Now sure, this could potentially play...
That is the dumbest character turn I've ever seen before.
Yep.
Exception one. Only one exception. Okay, so I went to go watch a movie in the theaters. It was called Skyline. And I was really enjoying it. Like, I was really, really enjoying it. Like, the humans were just getting their shit wrecked. They were just getting wiped straight the fuck out. It was horrible. Everything was going bad. The alien vehicles were interesting to look at and all this other kind of stuff until they got to the hook of the movie. So this guy runs into one of the creatures with an SUV, kills it, right? The thing comes back to life, grabs him, does something to his head to where his head explodes, and removes his brain and plugs it into itself and powers back up. And at that point, I wanted to Molotov cocktail my own TV. I was pissed. It's like, how in the fuck is this their plan? Anyhow, moving right along with this disappointment.
Play into a story at a later date, but chances are we won't see that for a year or two from now. And when it does finally play into a game, I'll bet my life that having the knowledge of Spartan Ops and Escalation really won't matter. Halo Escalation was a failure of a comic, in my opinion, and given how much good there is in certain parts, it really pains me to say that. The initial 6 issues, barring the deceptive descriptions from Dark Horse, were actually really good, and those 2-part stories about Tanaka and the bioweapon were really up there in terms of narrative quality. The art is another story, but that's not really pertinent to this discussion. If you avoided picking up the individual issues, you were probably better off, and if you want to get into it now, you'll certainly save money by getting the trade paperbacks. Maybe it was too much to hope that Escalation would have stronger ties to Halo 5, but I just can't accept that, especially given the quality of comics past. Please, 343, if you see this, understand that we don't dislike Halo comics, but as I've said, there is a certain bar of quality that was set by the Marvel run comics that these just don't live up to. After the less than stellar reception of the Kilo 5 books, you proved that you could learn from your mistakes with the latest batch of books. I don't think anyone would disagree that the books from this year alone were some of the best in a long time. And honestly, Halo Evolutions remains one of my favorite publications of all time, Halo-wise. I sincerely hope that you can do the same with whatever Halo comic comes next. Well, that's my pseudo-soapbox speech for today. Thank you.
This was disappointing, dude.
Yeah, it was.
Oh my god. 24 issues, and the only thing that's happened is Palmer found a really fucking weird reason not to hate Halsey, which turns her from a plank to a slope plank. And Halsey doesn't have the Janus key anymore. That's all. 24 episodes. Fuck me.
And the introduction of Tanaka.
Yeah, well, at least there's one bright spot.
Oh, by the way, Celine Dion.
Celine Dion is awesome.
Celine Dion? Yeah, him? He made off with, like, half of Julam Dama's ships.
I cannot get over that name.
Yeah, we never see him again.
Fucking really.
We never see Celine Dion ever again after this.
Oh my god, you gotta be kidding me.
We know he's still out and about, but no fucking clue where he's gone.
This is dumb. Then it's wasted. It's fucking pointless. You just cut the nuts off your only villain. Good job. The fuck? Oh my god. Alright, this utter disappointment has been Halo Escalations episode 21 through 24. This was painful. And I don't know what else to say about it.
Yes.
Well, for me and Archo,
bye-bye.
please don't write anything like this ever. Goodbye. Oh, God. Went all this way and the only thing that happened is she lost the fucking Janus key.